Welcome to the Finding Your Freedom podcast, the podcast helping high-achieving professionals thrive with freedom and purpose. I'm your host, Nat Baldwin. In each episode, we'll explore transformative journeys, practical strategies, and inspiring stories to help you create a life aligned with your true values. Whether you're seeking to optimize your current role or explore new paths, this podcast is your guide. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome David Garwood, the founder of The Solo Coach and host of the Solo Coach podcast. David's journey is a powerful example of finding freedom through bold choices and self-discovery. After spending over a decade in the IT world as a technical enabler, David took a life-changing sabbatical 2 years ago that completely transformed his path. During this time, he trained as an accredited transformation coach and embarked on a solo backpacking venture across 7 countries: Australia, New Zealand, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, so many different countries. What makes David's story particularly compelling is that he was once someone who attributed his success to everyone else around him and says he was even afraid to spend a weekend alone. Yet through his travels and personal development work, he discovered his true capabilities and a new way of living on his own terms. Today, David helps solopreneurs, solo pathfinders, and solo travelers break through self-doubt, gain clarity, and building fulfilling lives and businesses that align with who they truly are. His podcast, which was launched in January this year, has already featured fascinating conversations and has practical episodes tackling questions like, I'm stuck in a rut and I've got an idea, but I don't know where to start. David, it's a pleasure to have you on the Finding Your Freedom podcast. I'm excited to dive into your journey from IT professional to transformative coach, explore how solo travel changed your perspective on life and work, and discover the lessons you've learned about creating life on your own terms. Welcome to the show.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nat. It's fantastic to be here. Can I take you everywhere I go with me to introduce me like that, please?
Exactly. It's quite an introduction, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm pleased with that. Well, you deserve it. Let's dive in. If you were to write a short biography of your life, what would be the main chapters and milestones you'd include?
Wow, great question. Where to begin? I grew up in Nottingham, originally from Nottingham, and I grew up in a small little village, going to a local country school, and I was a big fish in a small bowl. And at the end of my A-levels, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my life. So I went up to Leeds University to study civil engineering, which was what my dad studied when he was younger. And I found myself pursuing a parent's dream. So I'm sure many of your listeners might know what that feels like. When you don't really know what you want for yourself and you've not really defined your own identity as a young man, it can be easy to sort of grab the hopes and dreams of a family member or a friend, or in my case, a parent, and try to make them your own. So I went away to Leeds University and studied civil engineering, and I realized quite quickly that it wasn't really for me. So straight away, I felt like a tiny fish in a huge ocean, completely outside of my comfort zone. And a lot of what I needed and wanted from life, I wasn't getting in university. I felt like a number and wasn't part of a community. I didn't feel like I belonged there. I didn't know anyone. Luckily, I made one great friend called Winthrop. He's still a friend now. But despite the course wasn't really for me, and I felt like I was on the wrong path. So 1.5 years into my degree, I decided to drop out, leave university, and in place of university, take up an IT apprenticeship, which sounds simple, but it was a really difficult decision to make. And I felt like a total and utter failure and a dropout. And I felt like I was going to have to justify my decision that I'd made for the rest of my life. And I felt like an embarrassment and a failure in my dad's eyes as well. And it was only years later that when I made a success of my IT career, rose through the ranks from apprentice to technician, to senior technician, to infrastructure analyst, and then IT manager, did I actually realize, and me and my father had a great conversation about the fact that it was the right decision to drop out of university, and it was the right move to follow, felt right for me. And then 11 years later, I found myself in that same position that I'd found myself at uni of feeling like I was lost and I was on the wrong path. And I was surrounded by people who were like on a flight for a destination that they wanted to get to, but I didn't. So again, I decided to follow my heart and my gut instinct and leave the world of IT and go on what was a 4-month sabbatical, followed by a whole year of traveling, a career break, as you mentioned in my lovely intro. And whilst I was traveling, I decided to train as a transformative life coach with a company called Animas. And on return from my travels and a little additional stint in another IT role, I decided this really isn't for me, and I want a life in being a coach and helping people to find and follow their dreams and to see and realize their full and whole potential, which is what I do now as my company, The Solo Coach. So I appreciate that's just a whistle-stop tour, but I'll hand the baton back to you, Nat.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And a lot of that resonates, especially with the kind of following in your father's footsteps and not knowing what to do, especially early on in life. I had exactly the same experience. My father was a law professor and I just did law because that's all I knew. What else was I going to do? And then I actually studied law thinking I'll just do something else. And then when the time came, I didn't know what else to do. So I just did law because everyone else was doing it. And that's what I'd fallen into. So that definitely resonates. And that bit, I suppose, the way you describe it, it sounds as though you sort of had two separate moments in your life where you felt a little bit lost. And I'm just wondering, can you take yourself back to that point in time and tell us how are you actually feeling? What was the impetus to kind of make a change at that point?
So I'm going to go back to the more recent example of being in my IT role. I loved working in IT. I was part of a fantastic company in Harrogate and I was part of a wonderful team. And I was, I felt like a very valued member of that organization and loved particularly the social aspect of my job. But I found myself during team meetings looking out the window and wondering if this was for me anymore and if where I'd come from and what had got me here was necessarily where I was going and what was going to get me into the future that I wanted for myself. So I'm sure you know the feeling of daydreaming and wondering, is this the life I really want to live? And, going to funerals and things and being involved in quite a nasty bike accident. The combination of these events kind of led to me having a wake-up call of thinking life's really fragile and we only have one life and we need to make the best of it. And I felt that for me, I wasn't making the best of my life and I wasn't necessarily on the right path anymore. So I wasn't sure what entirely to do. And that's when coaching came into my life, initially through a one-to-one developer called Tom at work, who listened to me in a way that no one's ever listened to me before. And he really helped me to hear myself think out loud. So when we're typically thinking, thoughts go round and round like a washing machine. But when you're talking to someone else, they do what you're doing now. They listen intently and ask questions to open up your thinking, to help you see things from a different perspective and take a step back from the problem. And that's what Tom did for me. And it was so powerful that I sought out a private coach called Russell outside of my day job and started working with him. And quite quickly, our conversations were along the lines of, I love this company and I've loved being in this role, but it doesn't feel like that shoe fits anymore. What on earth am I supposed to do about it? And initially I made a few changes to my approach at work, working very closely with my manager, and things got better, but I still felt like I was in the wrong place for me. So it was through the process of lots of fantastic coaching conversations with Russell that I mustered up the courage and the insight and had the realization of, I want to go and do some solo travel. I know that I've always struggled spending time on my own. As you said in the introduction, the concept of even just a weekend on my own in the shared house that I used to live in was horrible and I hated it. And I really was unhappy when I was just in my own company. And I sort of knew, I had this feeling that I'm going to have to lean into that discomfort. I'm going to have to face it and do something about it in order to get happy in my own company so that I can progress with my life. And solo travel, initially, that was my main goal, was getting comfortable with being on my own in a new place where I didn't know anyone, and basically facing into all those feelings that I hated when I went to university, of just being a tiny fish, basically a fish out of water.
Thank you. What was it like day to day? What was your day to day life like as IT? I'm gonna say you gave me about 5 different job titles there that all went over my head.
Yeah.
My
Tech
IT
guy.
knowledge is not fantastic. So what was it like? What didn't you like specific? I think it would just help people to hear very specific information about what your day to day was like, and specifically what you were feeling at that point. What didn't resonate with you?
I think I felt like I was going through the motions, and I felt very much like a Groundhog Day was going on. And from week to week, I didn't feel like I was necessarily changing or growing anymore. So even though the role had its satisfaction, I loved connecting with my team, spending time with them. I got some kick out of problem solving, technical problem solving. I realized that what used to bring me pleasure when I started 11 years prior, my IT career, I became a bit numb to that source of pleasure, and getting new technology out of the box no longer bothered me. New boxes would sit on my desk for days and I'd have no interest in opening them. I just felt like my passion had kind of dropped out of my role as, we're constantly changing and evolving species. And I feel that it's natural that after a period of time, in my case, 11 years or so, your passion maybe moves on to something else and you change, and you realize that a huge part of what I loved in my early IT career was being in a people-facing role. And every day I was just solving problems for teachers in a school and students in a school. And I loved it because people would say, wow, Dave, you're a hero. This is amazing. Thank you so much for fixing my printer. I got lots of satisfaction. And then as I rose through the ranks, I ended up in a position where very often I'd be working on a problem that would affect the whole company, but no one would know I was working on it. And I was quite separate from the customers and the end users that I'd initially been dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And even though I was paid a lot more money and I was in a position of seniority, and I reached a very prestigious level of my IT career, my actual source of satisfaction and joy was not really there anymore. And I felt this disconnect, and I just knew that something was missing, but I didn't know what it was. So work, I was really struggling with, and I also felt very anxious at changes that were going on around me as I was trying to control the systems. And when unexpected issues would occur, my team would run to them and be really excited by them because they thrived on the uncertainty. And I was at the back of that group of people running to the problem because I hated uncertainty and I wanted certainty and consistency. And I was not energized by things that were on fire. I was more energized by improving things that were already good and making them even better. So I realized lots of self-awareness was cultivated in the period that I was coached initially. And I realized that certain elements of this role that really I'm not playing to my strengths. And my life outside of work, I'd been in a couple of relationships that had not worked out in the end. I was collecting possessions, a nice car, a nice phone, saving up money in the bank, but it didn't bring me fulfillment. And I realized that I don't actually want any of these things. I want how I think they'll make me feel. And the big car, the nice phone, the PlayStation, all the stuff and the money going up in the account every month didn't make me feel like I thought it would. So it was sort of like a hollow victory, as though something was missing.
Yeah, so it's quite a common story, isn't it, with kind of midlife careerists or midlife professionals, where you just get to a point and you sort of, to a certain extent, I think a lot of people, it just kind of, they justify it to themselves by, well, I'm earning a lot of money and I've spent years to get to this point, so can I really just sort of inverted commas throw it all the way? That's the kind of common thing you hear, isn't it? To go and do something else. So it was obviously brave of you to pack it in. And tell us a bit about that decision to actually sort of down tools and go traveling.
Wow. Well, there's a lot I could say on it, but I think try and keep it reasonably brief. Initially, I decided to go on a sabbatical, and I actually prepared with my manager that I might even come back after 2 weeks because I might hate being out of work and not having a purpose in my life so much that I might be back within 2 weeks. So we genuinely prepared for that eventuality. Luckily, it didn't happen, and I went off to France and did some volunteering. I found out quite like this, so I went a little bit further down into Spain, and then I really got the wind under my wings. I went off to Croatia and ended up working my way through the Balkans, going from hostel to hostel, meeting people, making friends, having deep conversations with them, typically at midnight around a campfire, and realised that the world is full of these people like me who don't necessarily know what they want to do. They feel like they're on the wrong path. They feel like they're trapped and stuck, and they're just trying to figure out what's going on inside because there's like this storm raging inside of them and they don't know what to do about it. And that was the point that I was at when I decided to take that sabbatical, but with the safety of my rented house, my car and my job were waiting for me when I got back 4 months later. And when I went back to work, I just felt like the shoe didn't fit anymore. And the sabbatical showed me what I needed to know. It answered the question, is the answer to take a break and come back to work, or is the answer somewhere else? And at that point, I just knew the answer was somewhere else. And I had a yearning to do further solo travel. So I resigned the job, which was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It was like a breakup because I felt for that 3 months, I didn't have to resign once. In my head, I had to resign every single day for 90 days because I knew that there was a big probability that I could have said to work, I've changed my mind, I'd like to rescind my notice, and that they would have said, okay, David, no problem, don't do it again. But, in reality, I had to see out that process and finish work. I sold my car, I gave notice on my rented property, I sold all my other possessions and stored some at my dad's, and I booked a one-way ticket for me on my own to go to New Zealand, which is the furthest away country you can go from the UK. It was something like 27 hours flight time, and I just went on my own with a backpack on the 1st of February 2023 to see what was out there, because I felt a calling, specifically from Brisbane in Australia, but I felt that there was a calling, there was something that side of the world that was waiting for me, and I didn't want to spend my whole life wondering what might have been and what opportunities I might have missed had I not been and had a little look myself at what was out there.
You said loads there, but what I find really interesting and maybe what others can take away is you had a specific question when you went traveling. So there's this kind of cliche about, I went traveling to find myself, which is quite generic and broad, but actually you went traveling with that specific question in mind, which was, is this the right thing for me? Should I continue with it? And actually sounds like it was very powerful because you got the answer and then you were able to take action.
Exactly. I had a good CV, I had good experience, I got some good references. I've been lucky throughout my career to work with some fantastic managers and teammates who have really challenged me to grow and developed me to a high level. And I knew that if I came back from traveling and decided I wanted my IT world back, I knew there was a high chance that I could go and jump back into an IT role somewhere, which was actually what I ended up doing. But the point was, I had to go out there and see what was out there for myself. And I'd met a mechanic a few years ago who spent his whole life, 35 years, wondering what might have been if 35 years ago he took the flight that he booked for himself to Australia, but he didn't. He chose to miss that flight and stay here for a partner that sadly later cheated on him with his best friend. And his world burned down and he never got the chance to go to Australia. And I remember speaking to him and thinking, I hope that I never end up in life spending 35 years wondering what might have been if I would have tried, because typically we don't regret the things we did. We regret the things we didn't do and the conversations we didn't have.
Yeah, wow, Maze, that's a powerful story to hear, and what a person to meet on your travels. So take us forward then from that point. You've been traveling, you figured out you said you picked up another IT role, but then eventually you decided you didn't want to do IT as a full-time job anymore. Tell us about how you got into coaching.
So yeah, I came back from travel. A former manager had rang me about a fantastic opportunity in a company, and I went and tried it on for size. And it didn't feel like it fit me. And I wasn't happy there. And for me, it was the last hurrah, and it was kind of the final straw and the reminder of, yeah, I don't fit this world anymore. It's not for me. So I left on good terms without burning any bridges, and decided that I'm going to I spoke to the coaching company I've trained with, they're called Animas. I spoke to them and said, hey guys, I want to come and work for you. Don't care what it is. I just want to do a role for you. And then a professional storyteller role appeared, which I said yes to. And then I started a role which I've never done before. I'm not qualified to do, and I've no experience of doing. And my brief was, let your curiosity lead you. And, let's just draw out the stories of the people who have trained and studied with Animas, work with Animas, or affiliated with Animas, etc., etc. And I just love having conversations with people. I love hearing stories. And for me, it was the coming together of passion and skills that I hadn't necessarily got yet, which I cultivated very much on the job. I was faking it until I made it, and then faking it some more, if you like. And I loved it, and it was a resounding success. And throughout that 6 months that I was working for Animas in that fabulous role, I started working on my coaching business, which was formerly called something different. And then in October 2024, the name The Solo Coach came to me in a sort of 3 a.m. thought in the middle of the night. I wrote it down and realized that this role is a reflection. This name of this business is a reflection of everything that I want to do and I'm passionate about in terms of solo travel, solopreneurs, solo pathfinders, as you mentioned in the introduction, and my 3 types of client. But the key thing was I started to build my business part-time while I was working with Animas. I did a lot of pro bono, free of charge coaching. I did loads of practice, what's called reciprocal coaching, where I was coaching other coaching trainees and they were coaching me to rack up enough hours to pass my diploma, and then to become confident enough to take that huge leap of faith and start asking for money in return for my services, which was incredibly difficult. But that's, again, a whistle-stop tour of what led me to today.
Great. What were the biggest challenges you faced during that transitional period?
Lots. And I'd say the biggest are around self-worth, self-confidence, and self-belief, or rather the lack of it. So at the beginning of my coaching journey, I was studying and enjoying learning this course. And then we were told quite quickly on in the course, you need to start practicing coaching now. And it was that huge realization of, oh my God, I have to go away and do this. And I had a very harsh self-critic, as a lot of us do. And I felt like a fraud. And for a long time, I've suffered with imposter syndrome style thoughts, feeling like someone's going to find me out. And this has been throughout my IT career as well. And funnily enough, it came with me for coaching. And it's been very difficult. And I've had a lot of conversations with my coach, Russell, to help me realize that I'm not a fraud and I'm not an imposter. And I can do this. And I do this, and I will continue to do this. And a lot of that I've managed to work on through practicing and racking up the testimonials and the success stories, and actually seeing that the conversation I've had with people has led them to a positive outcome, and they go away, they feel better, feel more fulfilled and they're able to do things in life that they were putting off or not doing for some reason before. And it's through racking up lots of those stories that I started to believe it, and the penny started to drop of David can actually do this now, rather than David is playing at it and is just acting through it and he doesn't really know what he's talking about or doing.
Imposter syndromes come up time and time again in these conversations. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's something psychological about, well, actually, there is a certain amount of sense in imposter syndrome at the beginning because you actually don't have the experience, right? To have the self-confidence. So it's not just a irrational lack of confidence in oneself, is it? I wouldn't have said. It's like you just literally don't have the skill set. You have to get out there and you have to do it. And it kind of links in with that fake it till you make it, doesn't it? But it's the kind of, what would you call it? The kind of courage to get through that phase. We all know it's maybe there, but then you just have to kind of push through, would you say?
Absolutely. It's that learning curve. I think we call it the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it's like the height of arrogance and I know it all, and then the pit of despair when you start to find out and realize just how much you don't know and you've got to learn. But I think for me, the critical turning point with the way I felt about imposter syndrome, and I do that because it's not an actual real syndrome, but we've labeled it. The critical turning point for me was when I heard on a podcast that those feelings are actually a characteristic of many people, or in fact, the majority of people who've done great things in their life. And the majority of great leaders as well have that feeling and that internal narrative of you're not good enough and someone's going to find you out and you've not got what it takes, because then we overcompensate. We work even harder to prove to other people that we've got what it takes, but more importantly, to prove to ourselves that we've got what it takes. And what that manifests as, when you look at it from the outside in, is someone who works really hard on all areas of their life, trying to prove to themselves that they've got what it takes. So you end up with a really effective leader, or someone who's a fantastic partner in their relationship, or a fantastic parent, because they feel underneath they haven't got what it takes. And for me, I think that led to a lot of the success in my career that I experienced, because I was overcompensating and working extra hard to sort of, like I say, to prove myself to myself.
When you speak and today, and I've spoken to you before, it's clear that you've got a passion for self-development and self-improvement. And I'm wondering how your perspective on life has changed over the course of this transition from IT specialist through to transformational coach.
Wow, again, great question. Now, where do I start? I think for me, I often say to people, when you go on a journey and when you go on particularly solo traveling, you realize quite quickly just how much that you're capable of. And I believe that we are all way more capable than we in fact realize. So that has definitely led me to this journey. I've always been a big fan of personal development, as demonstrated by one of my shelves full of self-help books here. And
real, that's not
I think
fake background.
That's real. That's real. They move, miss, and they've all been read, sometimes several times, so they're all dog-eared and yeah, they've got a coffee spill on them. The way books should be, in my opinion, read and enjoyed. But yeah, the point being, how's my perspective on life shifted? I think a huge thing that's changed for me while I was traveling was just learning to trust myself, cultivating lots and lots more self-awareness and understanding of myself, and tapping into my gut instinct and my intuition. And I often say to my clients, if it feels right inside, if it feels right, it probably is. And if it feels wrong, it also probably is. And if you feel called to go out and do something, if you've got a vision, if you've got something like an idea that keeps kicking around in your head, and you doodle about it when you're daydreaming and when you've got some spare time and you like to talk about it down the pub, but you've never done anything with it, I believe that there's a reason that idea is there. And it is to be your job is to do something with it and to try and make it into a reality, and that for me has been a driving force now of this journey. And I'm now leaning into what feels right rather than denying my feelings inside and trying to force myself like a square peg to fit into a round hole, which is what I was doing for a lot of years in my IT career, which led to several burnouts as well, because there was this war raging inside of me of like, these two forces that were opposing each other. And I was just kind of trying to suppress it, bottle it up and push it back down again, how I was actually feeling, rather than let it out, embrace it, try and understand it and figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, that's great reflection. I guess that's what I don't know who, the Americans or the Gen Zs or someone would call this kind of authentic self. And the question I'd have is, how does that feel different from the person who's kind of fighting themselves?
I thought you might ask this following our last conversation. And I think it's not huge and loud and brash. It's very quiet. And it's that whisper at the end of the day that says, I've had a good day and I've enjoyed it. And I've made a difference today. And I feel like I'm in alignment with myself. My head and my heart are in alignment. And I feel like I'm being the person that I'm meant to be. And I'm following the dream that really is mine and isn't someone else's. And it's going to bed and going to sleep in the knowledge of I feel like I'm on the right path for the first time in a very long time. And particularly on a Sunday evening, feeling good about Monday morning that's coming and looking forward to it and not dreading it and having the Sunday afternoon blues that I've had for quite a while in the past. Many times it's a very familiar feeling. So for me, like I say, it's just that quiet voice and that feeling of alignment. And it's taken this raging storm inside and it's become a bright sunny day with occasional thunderstorms, not going to lie. But on the whole, for the majority of the time, I'm happy, I'm enjoying what I'm doing and I feel fulfilled. And I feel like I'm going in the right direction and I'm heading towards the right direction, the right destination now, rather than feeling lost, trapped or stuck, or as though I'm just barking up the wrong tree.
And for people who are stuck in maybe similar situations or feel like they're stuck in similar situations with jobs, perhaps in their mid-career, what practical advice would you give to listeners who are contemplating similar changes in their lives? Maybe not to become a coach, obviously, but just to, like I think you put it very well there, if there's something niggling away, if you're always making cards for your friends at the weekends, there's these types of passions and what can you do with them? Yeah, what advice would you give to people?
Exactly, Nat. If there's something niggling away at you, if there's that feeling inside of, I'm just not happy and I'm not happy consistently. This is not just a bad day at work, because we all have them. This has been a bad month, a bad year or a bad decade, and I'm tired of it and it's worn me down. And for me, I got lower backache for years. I kept swapping my chair at work and my car, thinking it was one of those. And my health just wasn't that good. And it was only when I actually left work for a while and properly took some time out that those feelings and that backache disappeared. Some would say, obviously, you have to consider that I was sat at a desk all day. And then I went travelling and was stood up and moving around. And I agree, that's valid. But the point was, I felt better in myself. I was sleeping better. I was happier. I was freer. Not just because I was on a giant holiday, but because I was finally giving myself some time to process all of the feelings and emotions that I'd suppressed for so many years, including, relationships that had broke up and family members that I'd lost due to old age, and even the feelings, the grief. A lot of that work, I'd never really done it on myself and I'd suppressed it and I'd distracted myself with nice things. And it was going traveling that, I took some time to work through that and took some time to recall memories from the past and to kind of unarchive them and then put them in order and re-archive them again. But yeah, if you've got that little voice that's niggling away at you and you're feeling not quite right, I'd say lean into it. Whatever feels right for you, if it feels right to read a self-improvement, self-help book as a first step, take that first step, because the most important thing is taking a step to starting to do something about it. I didn't become a solo coach overnight. I started many years ago by reading a book called The Happiness Project in about 2018, which got me onto this genre and got me interested in personal development. And I could have never imagined when I was there that 8 years later I'd be here. But yeah, the point being, taking your first step's really important. And I think the key one is realizing that you're not on your own and you're not the only one who's feeling like this. And you're not as stuck and trapped as you believe you are. And if you do get to the point where you think, I'm going to have a career change and I'm going to leave being a solicitor, a lawyer, an IT manager behind, you're not throwing it all away in the way that you think you might be, because so many of your skills are transferable. And when you go off and do something else, you take you with you and your relationships, your background, all your experience to date and all your knowledge. It's relevant and it comes along for the journey. And my whole podcast is about sharing the journeys of people who have taken the path less followed and have taken an enormous, courageous leap of faith and left something behind that they feel is no longer serving them. And they are living, breathing, walking, talking evidence that they've not thrown anything away. What broke the breaking of them is actually become the making of them. And very often they do something that's somehow linked back to what they used to do. And they're using that knowledge and experience and all those connections in a new, more interesting and exciting way. So it's just that reframe. And for me, I'd just go back to just that reminder to people that you're not on your own. Because when I dropped out of university, I felt completely like I was on my own and I was a failure and I was a one-off. And, my life was doomed and I was going to spend the next 40, 50 years of my career justifying my decision to drop out of university before I finished my degree. And that was not the case, because a couple of years later and there onwards, nobody ever even asked. Even though it was there on my CV, nobody asked, because they were more interested in me and my experience and my clear enthusiasm for what I was doing every day. And they weren't interested in some old degree that I'd not completed because it lost its relevance. And I ended up with 3 jobs where in the job spec, it said a first class or related degree in a relevant subject or field, and I didn't have it. So I was proof that you can go out and get a job with that requirement, but because you can get it based on experience rather than having that piece of paper.
Yeah, I love that. I really liked what you said there about reframing. And I think, and taking that skill set with you. There's a great book, What Color is My Parachute, I think it's called. Yeah, great book all about this, about people generally will understand their competencies. So I'm good at this bit of IT and that bit of IT, and I can code in this language and that language, but we're not actually particularly great at understanding ourselves so much and what our soft skill sets are. So definitely think that is worth bearing in mind, because we're talking in your context about making quite a big jump, like quite stark, I would almost say, change of career from an IT. I keep struggling over my words here. Well, IT, how would I describe you? IT?
A tech guy.
IT guy. I'll just say that. So a techie guy through to a coach, whereas actually, and some of the coaching I'm doing is about that reframing element, which is you actually do enjoy your career, you do enjoy the sector you're in, but actually there's certain bits of the job that you don't like. And it's through that it's all to do with self-awareness. It's through that self-awareness, isn't it, that you understand, well, I don't like this bit, but I really enjoy this bit. And we understand that not, I was going to say as we get older, but it's not just as we get older. It's to do with building that self-awareness through self-reflection. And then, as you say, speaking to people and understanding that you're not alone and that you have options. And so, yeah, a lot of that really, really resonated. You also mentioned freedom there, so sticking on brand. How do you define freedom? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, if I can just draw on that last question again before I define freedom, like one of the most powerful activities I did with my coach back in about 2019, he drew a graph, and on the vertical axis was energy level, and on the horizontal axis was skill level. So you had these 4 quadrants: things that you're good at and you enjoy, the top right; things that you're good at but you don't enjoy, top left; and then the bottom ones were things that you're not good at and don't enjoy, or you enjoy and you're keen for but you're not yet good at. And when I did that activity, what we stood back and reflected on what I'd written, and in the top right quadrant, in that exciting space, the things I'm good at and energized by, it was all people focused, and it was having conversations with the team about how they can move forward and develop. And it was all to do with people, groups, communities, and conversations I loved having, and being in meetings, and, getting my head together, and collaboration. Whereas that top left box, that one of things that I'm good at but I don't enjoy, was all the technical stuff, the technical part of the role, the things I got great feedback for from the leadership team, but I didn't get any satisfaction from anymore. And it was that realization of, oh my goodness, I'm doing things that I don't enjoy anymore. No wonder I'm getting tired. No wonder I'm getting burnt out with this role. No wonder I feel just drained and de-energized by come Friday afternoon, and I don't feel satisfied anymore by it. And just that process, that very simple graph on a whiteboard, just led me to that huge realization of, I don't know what I'm meant to do, but I know I'm kind of playing in the wrong arena now. So I need to find a new arena to play in, and I need to look at what career I could transition to, taking my skills and experience with me, so that I'm playing to more of my strengths and doing stuff that energizes me, rather than doing stuff that just now is just much of a mushness, and it's just a grind, and it's no longer enjoyable. And then to move on to your
before you move on to the freedom thing, I think that's great. And actually, what a great exercise. I'm gonna have to come back to you and get exercise off you, because I think that'll help so many people. And I definitely think, and when you were speaking there, I could hear your passion. And actually, sometimes we have to look back and say, this is what you're doing. You're speaking to me on this podcast, instead of some other task that if you'd just kept on that path that you're on, you might be doing some other task right now that you just didn't have, you wouldn't be so passionate about, and you wouldn't be enjoying and energetic about. So I think that, it's I was listening to this psychology book at the moment, and they're looking at here and now examples and reflecting on those. And it's like, that is a here and now example of you having taken this path and being right here, right now, speaking to me with passion, rather than doing one of the other exercises on the quadrant that would have sapped your energy and would have left you depleted of energy, and presumably with those symptoms of burnout, needing to go to bed early, possibly just not feeling the healthiest within yourself, and all these other symptoms that you can get with stress and burnout.
Exactly. And I just want to call out, I don't blame IT. I don't want to poo-poo IT, because what became something that no longer energized me initially, and back in the early days, 5 years prior, it did. And I really enjoyed it. And I used to love technical problem solving and fixing that haze on that screen in that school, or, working out why one device wouldn't communicate with another, and then having that huge high five and dancing around the office with my colleagues because I got it working. I was that guy. It was like a scene from the IT Crowd. But I changed. I evolved. I grew apart from it. And I think it's just important to call out that we're ever changing beings, and we beat ourselves up because we've changed and we think we're doing something wrong, and that, something's broken and something's gone wrong, but it hasn't. It's kind of the natural flow of life. The only one constant in life is change. And in that book you mentioned, What Colour is Your Parachute? I recommend that to my clients who are looking at career change. And right in the introduction, it says that these days, starting now, people have an average of 25 jobs, roughly, and 5 careers, roughly. The key thing is, it's acceptable now. And we no longer live in that world where you have one job and one career and one employer for life. And it's actually more acceptable. And you hold yourself back sometimes by staying in one place too long, because you've got everything you were going to get from it. So it's the logical next time to move on. And what led to the end of my solo travels is that my partner said to me, looking at your growth on a graph of growth against time, you've kind of gone up exponentially and then you've leveled out now. And it's just another hostel, another country, another culture. It's not giving you the growth and the excitement, and you're not learning from it and loving it like you used to. So perhaps it's time to come home. And it was. And I literally repeat that exercise with my clients and say, have we got a bit of a leveling out of a graph going on here? Has the growth stopped? Has the enthusiasm, has it kind of tailed off? And they might say, yeah, it has. Feels a bit stale, feels a bit Groundhog Day. And that can be when it's time to initiate a change of some sort.
Yeah, and it's not surprising people feel that way about themselves and about change, because it's kind of pervasive in our, say, Western kind of culture, which is, I mean, even if you look at, not to get political here, but just generally in politics, if people change what they are saying about any given subject, they'll get piled on. But change is completely fine. It's completely natural. Like you say, if you were enjoying something, you enjoy the first couple of Mars bars you eat, you won't enjoy the 10th, 11th. So that's just completely logical, but we sometimes lose track of that. And the other thing I'd say on change is that you hear people sometimes say, oh no, they're trying to change me, or if I do that, I'm afraid I might change. And I always think of this thing of like, it's kind of taken, I think, from sort of Buddhist philosophies around change. We're always changing. Actually, at a cellular level, we're changing. We are growing new skin cells constantly. We are actually physically changing. We're not the same people we were 10 minutes ago, let alone a year ago. So it's kind of like embrace that change, move with the change, and get the thing as we talked about here, kind of everyone changes, and it's going to get the help with the change and embrace it. God, I went on a change ramble. Right, where have I got to? What's the next question?
Freedom. And
back to freedom. That's on brand. Come on, freedom.
Just to add to that, Nat, and we'll move to freedom, I promise. But, even just look at like how your tastes change in life. I don't know about you, but I'm listening to different music to what I was listening to 10 years ago. I like different food now. I drink a different drink. In all other areas of life, we have change, and we're used to it, and we laugh at it, and it's fun. It's great to try new recipes and find a new cuisine that you like. So why not look at careers and jobs that way? Why look at it as something that's gone wrong and that's failed and something that's broken versus just the natural flow of change in life, as you mentioned? And so to come on to freedom, I think for me, my favorite definition of freedom is from a book I read a few years ago called The Choice by Edith Eger. She's a Holocaust survivor. Her book is quite similar to the work of Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And her definition is that when everything is taken away from you in life, absolutely everything, no one can ever take away your ability to choose how you will feel and how you will react. And no one can change it. They can attempt to influence it, obviously drastically in her case, because it's a shocking story and I was in tears reading it. I recommend reading it, but just caution advised, because the content is so shocking and deeply, deeply saddening. But the point in that book that she makes is that you can choose how you feel. And Jack Canfield, in his book, The Success Principles, talks about ERO, event plus response equals outcome. The events in life we have no control over. I learned when I was solo traveling to let go of this need to be in control of it all. I'd make the best plans ever, and I'd have the next 3 trips and the 3 travel connections planned to get from A to B, and it'd all fall over. And then I'd be really angry. And I learned quite quickly that you can't do that, particularly not in Southeast Asia. You can make a plan and you can hope for the best, but you've got to entertain the reality that it might all fall over and go wrong. And you might end up at midnight, sat outside a petrol station on a plastic chair, waiting for a bus that may or may not come. And, it's learning to dance in the rain of those moments.
And it's then,
for me,
when you're sitting, sorry to interrupt you, but it's a great point. And I love it, because when you're sitting on that chair because you've missed the bus, that's when you'll meet someone brilliant, golden nugget character that, will make your entire year's travel. So it's something I've definitely struggled with, this element of control and feeling angry if it doesn't go to expected plans. And I won't talk about the parable of the Chinese farmer. I'll save that for a different podcast. But that's something that really helped me to understand that, yes, you thought it was going to go like this. It hasn't. It's gone a different way. Where's the joy? Where's the meaning? Where's the something else in the new path? And it's like, the way I think about it now is, how quickly can I adapt? How quickly can I lose that emotion that was attached to the first path and get into the second path or the third path? And I'm thinking to myself, if I can reduce that time, go through the emotions quicker to get to the point where I accept the next path, the better. And it's just through practice, isn't it? You just get better and better.
Exactly. And that, this isn't philosophical nonsense. For me, it's very real and it's very practical. And it's recognizing what a manager once drew 3 circles on a whiteboard for me on a day I was stressed out. And he said to me, these are spheres of influence. In the middle is all the stuff you can control. In the next one out, it's the stuff that you can influence. And in the next one out, it's the stuff that you have no control or influence over. And the majority of the stuff that was stressing me out was all in the far circle. Some of it was in the next circle along, and virtually none of it was in that middle circle. And in reality, the only place that's worth putting our effort into is on the things that we can directly change and control, and also some effort into the things we can influence, guarding our energy levels and enthusiasm levels so we don't burn ourselves out, trying to control the uncontrollables. So the ERO, event plus response equals outcome, I learned that shit's going to happen when we're traveling, just like in life. It does. You're having a great day and then you get a call, a family member's ill. I had that in January. Wasn't good. But I decided in that moment, I'm not going to panic. I'm going to reach out to some support network, speak to my nearest and dearest. I'm going to get myself there as quickly as possible, safely. I'm going to find out the information of what's going on, and I'm going to accept that this is outside of my control. This is in control of the doctors. They're going to do what they're going to do, and I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to do my best to support that family member. But the key thing for me was that it was outside of my control. I couldn't make that person better. All I could do was be there for them, and I decided to respond to the event by being positive for them and being strong for them, and then leaning on my partner for emotional support. And I'm delighted to say 6 weeks later, we moved past it completely. They came out of hospital and they're making a full recovery. But the point was, I couldn't control the event, but I could control my response. And therefore the outcome was very positive. When we look back on that experience as a positive one, and I believe everything in life happens for us and not to us, and that there's always a golden thread. You just have to look for it and find it. And me and that family member, we had a lot of discussions at the time about what's this been sent to teach us? What can we learn from this, and how can we grow from this? And I believe we strengthened our connection to each other through that really difficult and traumatic process. And I look back on it as goodness me and that person got really close at the start of this year, and we had some fabulous conversations that we've never had before, rather than the start of this year was an absolute shit fest. Because it was. But for me, it's just choosing to look at it in a more positive light, but not in some hairy fairyland that it didn't happen, not in denial. It's like optimism grounded in reality, which is what my coach Russell talks a lot about.
It's fun, Henry. Glad you told that story. I'm sorry, obviously, to hear about the illness, but it's such a great story about how you can take the positive. And that even when I say that positives, it's like, well, the person was ill, and that is, like you say, that's a bad situation, but you really put it across well there in terms of you just have to accept the reality, but try and look from what could be good. And it sounds, to some people, might sound a little bit mumbo jumbo, but it's like real world effects, like you say, isn't it? It's like that mentality that you have and how you've trained your brain to accept and look at the positives means that you then get a better outcome then if you panic, you are there not able to turn up for that person in the right way, and it goes a totally different direction, and you're not helpful to the person you need to be helpful for. So thank you for that. Going to move the conversation on a little bit and address what some people might sort of be listening to this thinking there's an elephant in the room here, which is finances. Because some people, it's fine, we've reached our kind of mid-career, made some money, and then we're able to kind of transform our lives and become coaches. And like some people might think it's all a bit navel-gazing, but they'll be thinking, well, how do you navigate the financial situation? So I'm quite keen to address if you're happy to talk a little bit about how you dealt with that.
Absolutely. It's a great question. Thanks, Nat. And it's a topic I don't often get to talk about. And I think, so to start with finances in the context of going solo traveling, I spent my career, years and years and years living below my means. Yes, I acquired some nice possessions in that time, but I also took great care of them. And I never had a new phone without trading in the old one when it still had some residual value left. And I took great care of those cars. People who knew me at the time knew I spent virtually every weekend cleaning and polishing. So they looked even better when I sold them than when I bought them. But the point was, it was maintaining my assets, because underneath that, I was preparing every day to hit the emergency exit and leave work and leave my current life behind and go and do something rash and crazy and adrenaline filled. I was always preparing for it. So the second I bought a new car, I polished it and cleaned it all up, and I took all the pictures and wrote an advert ready so that when the day came I could sell it. Bam, I could sell that car. And it sounds really strange and a bit screwed up, but that was what I used to do. And I always keep my phone in a dad case, a leather folding case with screen protector on, so that I preserve its value, keep it in immaculate condition with the original box, with its vacuum seal, all ready to wrap up again and trade in at CEX or on some other trading website. I have no affiliation with any of them, to get some money in order to put that money back in the account and go. I did it for years and years and years. I lived well below my means. I always lived in shared houses, typically in the smallest room, and I negotiated the rent cost down with my lovely landlord. They loved it when I did that. And I was careful. Obviously, I had the odd outrageous splash out and, the odd expensive night partying. But on the whole, it was always bought up. My mum always taught me, save some, spend some. And saving excited me. Seeing the figure in the bank going up excited me for many years. Even when I was just an apprentice, I still tried to put something away, so that when the day came that I could go solo traveling, I'd got a nest egg there. Now, I preserved that nest egg by immediately going on a website called Workaway and going and doing volunteering in return for free bed and board. So the concept of Workaway, you go and work for 3 or 4 hours on a little farm, say, a day. You do half a shift. And then you stay for free in one of their rooms in their house or in a tent or in a caravan. I stayed in tents and caravans and farmhouses and all sorts. And they used to feed me like a king. And in return, they'd get some good work done on the farm. But it wouldn't cost them anything other than the use of their spare room and some food for me for 3 meals a day. So that was how I travelled for a long time. So actually, I calculated that my living expenses now in Leeds, just my living expenses alone, are actually exceeding what I spent per month for my whole year of solo travel. Because when I got out to Vietnam, I was staying in a 16-bed dormitory in a hostel for £4 a night and, just eating the local food for a few pounds here and there. I was living on virtually nothing. So a little bit of money, a few £100 for the month, went a really long way. Whereas, we'd go and blow that money on 2 or 3 nights out in the city centre or down a weekend in London. We'd blow that money on an outrageous holiday, if we're going all inclusive. But I really made it last. I wrung out every penny. That's why I love living in Yorkshire, where people have a reputation for being careful with their money, because I loved wringing out every penny and seeing how much experience I could get for the pounds that I'd got. And sometimes I didn't go skydiving in New Zealand, and there were certain experiences I chose not to do, so that I knew that £400, £500 could fund me having another month in Thailand. So I kept a very close eye on the bottom line, but also I was lucky enough to have managed to save quite a good amount so that I could splash out occasionally and stay in some nice hostels but with lots of volunteering in between. So that's to address the travel side. Would you like me to address the business side?
Well, we've got a lot of similarities. It's really interesting because we didn't do the helicopter ride up to the Franz Josef glacier, much to my wife's disappointment, because I was like, well, I think it was like 600 quid. And I was just like, well, I really try and be intentional like you are about what's the value to me and what's the pound or New Zealand dollar cost of that item. And if it doesn't quite weigh up, I struggle to, and I'm thinking, well, 600 quid, I could, we could live in Thailand for half a month on that or something, whatever it is. So yeah, a lot of that resonates. And we did a workaway in Cambodia for a couple of weeks. A great website. People should look that one up. So yeah, please go on with the next bit.
Thanks, Nat. So yeah, and Workaway, there are many other websites. There's World Packers, there's several other ones.
No, well, we're not the BBC. We don't.
I've got no affiliation with it. Go and check them all out. Google volunteering opportunities abroad, and there's loads of them. Just go and do one. Just choose one and do one. Honestly, it's brilliant. Best thing you'll ever do. But yeah, coming back to finances and business, it's been very challenging because I worked part-time initially for Animas, like I mentioned last year. And I started to gain a couple of, I think 3 coaching clients that were paying me. I set a very low rate for that coaching. Excuse me. And I kept the price right down to ensure that they were always getting more value from me than I was getting from them. So that I was under promising and over delivering every time, which I've since worked on and realized that doesn't really work. But it's what a lot of us coaches do in the early days. And so I was able to put some money into a business account, really recommend setting one of those up and watch that money start to go up. And then from a business account, I paid for my business coach and I paid for things like coffees with clients and travel expenses getting to and from clients' houses or going to business networking events. So I wasn't outrageous with it. There was no champagne dinners or anything, but it was just, a coffee here and there and a bus ticket here and there, a train ticket, and my coaches, which were obviously quite expensive. So I started to rack up this money and I did it as a hobby. And then when my job, my fixed term job concluded at the end of the year, I decided to go all out and to see if I could run this business as my sole source of income, which I've been doing since the 1st of January. And it's now just coming up the end of April. And it's been really difficult. I'm not going to lie. It's been really difficult during that time. Because initially I was just leveraging savings and an amount of money that I decided was like my safety net. And I was leaning on it each month for my rent, for my bills, for my living costs. But then as I've got more clients, as I've started to raise my price a little bit, I've started to lean less on my savings and I'm almost not leaning on them at all. But, in the interest of transparency and honesty, it takes a lot longer than you think it's going to take. It's a lot harder and it's painful. And there's these down days where you think, goodness me, is this all worth it? You look longingly at people with nicely high-paying full-time jobs. You see job adverts pop up on LinkedIn. You think my CV's eligible for that. LinkedIn dangles the carrot and tells you that your CV's eligible for it, just to rub that salt in the wound. But for me, it's just been key to just stay true to myself with this belief. And I absolutely believe it now, 100% in every fibre of my being, that I'm going to make a success of this and I'm going to be able to impact and change the lives of more people than ever before. And in return, it's going to at least cover my living costs, hopefully a little bit more than that as well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I know you will. Out of that, what you said there, I think I come back to this theme about not thinking about things in black and white terms. And when people are stuck in certain situations, I think they tend to do that. So earlier on, you said something around like find your kind of passion and spend some time on that. And I think often that's the best way to go with people, is just to, at the weekend, spend some time, or in the evenings, set up something. I mean, I don't like this idea of like sort of side hustle. I think it's a slightly different concept. It's like, if you're interested in becoming just pick a stupid example, football referee, well, do your coaching at the weekend, do your training at the weekend for your football refereeing, do your stuff in the evening and, build that up and start edging into it. what I'm getting as it's not black and white. I think it's the same when it comes to finances. It's probably not sensible in lots of situations to just quit your job and then just start giving something a go on the Monday. It's like, no, like you did, you pick up something part-time, you're able to give a go and then start moving into the area you're interested in. So that's what I take away from what you said. I have now brought us on to the regular part of the program, show, podcast, which is the Freedom Challenge. So this is where we ask you, David, the guest, to set me and our listeners something to do, which I'll do before the next episode, hopefully, something that pushes us outside of our comfort zone. What have you in mind for our Freedom Challenge this week?
Thanks, Nat. So you politely let me know before the episode that this would be coming. So my idea was just a simple one, and it was the first one that came to mind, was think of something, sit and think hard about something that you're putting off doing, something that's been on your list for a while. It might be having a difficult conversation with someone. It might be letting go of a possession or an item that's in the way, that's got a bit of sentimental value, but really it's not serving you anymore. Or something that's just a job that's been on your list, your to-do list for a little bit too long, and it's doing your head in and it's occupying mental space, and you keep coming back to it and you smile and laugh, but then you remember there's that thing I need to do, and then it sort of tarnishes that smile and laugh. And if there's something that's coming to mind for you, I feel like there is for you, Nat, I can tell you smiling, I would really encourage you to just go away and make a plan, if there needs to be a plan, to go and do it. Or ultimately, just go and do it. Make a start on it. If there's a broken fence panel that's just wobbling away in the wind and just winding you up every single night, and you keep thinking, I need to go and fix it, don't let perfection get in the way of good enough. If good enough means whacking some gaffer tape around it to stop it keeping you up at night, do that, and then you can come back to it at a later point to fully finish it. But I think a lot of people, we let perfection get in the way of good enough, and we let the fear of it being a bit shit or the fear of failing stop us from even starting.
I like that, and I'm smiling because I wish I'd spoken to you about 2 weeks ago, because the one that's hanging over my head was this is actually a bit of a ridiculous story. When I moved into a flat and we needed a couch, and I bought a couch just locally, not very much money, but then couldn't get it into the property. So then I had to put it in a garage. So I'd never used this couch. It's been sitting in the garage for a year. I've been thinking I need to take this to the recycling centre for a year. And then last week, myself and my wife, we thought, right, get the van out, put it in the van, take it to the recycling centre. And this thing that I'd built up in my head that was going to be, what happens if the recycling centre don't take it? What happens if the recycling centre's shut? What happens if it doesn't go in the van? It's going to take ages to get it from there into the van. I mean, the things we make up, the barriers we put in our way, I mean, it was laughable. I just picked it up, took about a minute to put it in this van, drove over, dumped it, took about 2 minutes, and we were having a coffee about 10 minutes later. And I was thinking, why the hell did I let that build up in the back of my head? So it's a fantastic freedom challenge. I just wish that I could have used that one for it. But I'm going to have to think of another one now, but that's fine. I'm sure I've got plenty of skeletons in the back of my head somewhere of things I haven't to do. So I will think of something and report back.
And I'm just curious now to ask you on that. You said that it's been there way too long and it wasn't as hard as you thought it to be to do, which is a lesson in itself. But I'm curious, how did you feel once that sofa had gone?
Oh, fantastic. Honestly, felt fantastic. It was like a weight lift. So cliched, but it was like a weight lifting off my shoulder, and just sitting there, and I was in such a good mood having that coffee because I got this massive job, which wasn't a massive job, but it was something lurking. And the other interesting thing about it was, and this commonly happens, is it links to something else. The couch isn't the couch. The couch means something. The couch, for me, meant something to do with, we've got to move. So it meant it was a big thing hanging over my head. Like, oh no, we're going to have to move the couch. As soon as I moved the couch, the idea of moving everything else became easier. So now this daunting task of having to move property, that became easy in my head because the couch had been dealt with easily. So it usually links with something else, doesn't it?
Something small, relatively small, but quite heavy, but relatively small. It sounds small, just a couch. Look at what it represented, and look at what space letting go of it freed up for and created for you, and literally that feeling of that weight off your shoulders. That's what I'm addicted to, that feeling.
I was listening to a podcast, I think it was last night. I think it was Andrew Huberman was on something, and I've forgotten his expression. But it was like these micro, like lots of things. He was saying that if you do lots of things you kind of don't want to do, so this morning I was thinking about it and I thought, what don't I want to do? Like a small thing, but I don't want to do it. And it was like doing the hoovering. So, and what he was saying was this actually has a physical effect on a certain part of your brain and makes you live longer because you've overcome lots of these mini obstacles. And I think you're training your brain to overcome them or something. I can't remember the detail. But anyway, yeah, it's a similar type of thing. But yeah, and we get confidence from it. Because I've gone through different parts of recent life and different sort of months. I'll be better at this than others. So if I get in the mindset of saying, as soon as I feel it to myself, I feel it as a kind of resistance. So if I feel that resistance, like, oh, I want to go and do that, but then I can't be bothered because I'd have to get in the car and I'd have to do it and start putting, I notice I'm putting barriers in the way. I push that aside, push through it and do it. And I felt certainly in recent history, I've had periods where I'm bad at that and I've fallen into old habits and just don't do things because I think, oh, it's a bit too much effort. And I've realized I've fallen into other good habits where I've noticed my brain going, oh, but that's going to be X, Y, and Z. And I've said, no, oh, that's interesting. I'm actually going to embrace that, push through it and do it. And that's where I think, as you alluded to earlier, get that self-confidence from. You get the buzz and you just start to feel better. You start to actually feel like you can do more things. You've got energy. You can take on the world. Whereas if you go the other way, it all just becomes a bit of a dirge. It's too difficult. Do you know what? I won't bother with that. Do you know what? I'll just watch Netflix. Do you know what? I'll just stay up till 12 o'clock. Do you know what? I won't make my bed. It's a spiral.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like a muscle. The more you flex it, the stronger it gets. The more you work through these things that are on your to-do list, the more you face up to the stuff that's doing your head in and move it on and let it go and free it up to go and be a couch somewhere else, or to be the couch that they use at the tip, the more that you create room for positive new experiences and new people. Sometimes very indirectly, letting go of a couch might lead to someone new coming into your life. I'm a huge believer of that. The more space you create, mental space as well, means that the more you can do and create with your life, and just, the more time for reflection. I've got a friend at the moment. He knows who he is. He's a great listener to my podcast. I'm sure he'll listen to this episode. And he's one by one working through everything that he's had on his to-do list for years. And I'm so proud of him. I'm so delighted for him. And every time I see him, I slap him on the back and say, you're flying now, mate. And he defined himself as someone who puts things off and never gets round to them. And I said to him, well, that's funny because the person I've seen this year is quite the opposite. And you're just addressing them, working through them all. And you can see him getting lighter, standing stronger and feeling happier and more fulfilled in himself. And it's like this positive momentum is built, and this feeling as though something amazing and something really fantastic is just on the horizon and we're getting towards that destination. It's wonderful to see, and I would recommend anyone to take that first step.
Yeah, so good. And it's like that weight. What's weighing you down? That's the question to ask yourself, isn't it? What's weighing you down? What haven't you done? And just go and do it. I've had similar things and more heavy emotional stuff and feeling as though I've let people down, and then just going and saying to them, look, I think I've let you down here, and stuff that I'd hold on to for 20 years, and then sort of turning around and we don't have a clue what you're talking about here, but that's kind of not the point. It's not the reaction. It's how you feel about it, how you get it off your chest. Right. We are going to have to wrap this up, David, because I think we could speak for about 5 hours here. I'm trying to podcast to around about an hour. So that's all been amazing. Go and check out David at his podcast and go and have a listen to the Solo Coach podcast, have a look at the Solo Coach website. And I just want to say I've really enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully we'll get you back another time. Maybe we can pick out a theme or something next time now we've heard your story. But yeah, just want to say thank you very much, and it's been great.
Thanks, Nat. It's been an honour to come on. I'm delighted that we had this opportunity. Your preparation right from when we first met and the information you sent me beforehand, the setup of today's session has been outstanding, and your delivery is awesome. I cannot wait to see what you are creating as your podcast really comes into its own, hopefully at the same time as mine. And I would love to have you as a guest on my podcast to hear more about your story.
Great. No, that'd be fantastic. Thanks for the invitation. I will look forward to that. And we'll leave it there. I will let you all know how we get on with our challenge as we tackle these things that we haven't been doing. So yeah, thanks again, David, for coming on.
Thanks, Nat. And let us know in the comments. Thanks to all the listeners. And hopefully I'll see you again soon on Nat's podcast or on my own.